houses of worship, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's a church, any house of worship. However, what happened here is a pending case again, but within the four corners of the indictment, they were, quote, gearing up for a resistance. They entered a house of worship, and I think the video speaks for itself. What happened in there, what the video doesn't show, is there were approximately 400 parishioners in there on a Sunday morning, families, grandparents with canes, children upstairs in Sunday school their parents were blocked from getting to them once this resistance took place, and they had named it Operation Pull-Up. It was heartbreaking for those families. They were terrified. I think they've all said that, and nothing like that should happen in this country, and under my watch, it won't.
Thank you, and just to clarify, accosting members of a congregation and creating a scene marked by intimidation and threat inside a house of worship would not be protected First Amendment activity, correct?
Absolutely not, and a grand jury has indicted individuals over that.
Thank you. One other question, just shifting a little bit. You know, my home state of North Carolina has been making national headlines at times, and particularly in the city of Charlotte. We've made pleas at times for our governor to get involved, bring in the National Guard. Our Fraternal Order of Police had pointed out that we were about 270 local cops below what we needed in order to adequately police the city. And yet the governor's declined to offer to partner with the federal government to bring in reinforcements to Charlotte. I want to give you just a few moments, really the balance of my time, to explain the impact that Memphis Safe Task Force has had on crime and safety in Memphis, because I know there was a place we saw that cooperation has tended to breed great results, and I would love to hear a little more about that.
Thank you. And I have numbers for you too. Well, and we're all right here in DC, we're all living right here in DC, and I think we've seen the remarkable impact that it has working with members of the Democrat Party on this, with law enforcement, with the mayor, with the police chief, doing everything we can to make DC safe. As of February 9th, there were nearly 10,000 arrests. This is DC. 1,000 illegal guns seized since the operation began, with carjackings down 81% from this time last year, and violent crime down 42%. DC is safer because of it. We know we had a National Guardsman shot, and we had a beautiful young woman killed. I went to her funeral, and I keep in touch with the National Guardsman who was shot, his parents. He's doing great. He's a miracle. Please continue to pray for him. I know my time is up, but same results I spoke about earlier in Memphis, and we're still working on that with the help of Make Memphis Safe Again.
Well, again, I think it just draws an incredible contrast between what we've seen happening in Minneapolis versus what we've seen happen in DC, what we saw happen in Memphis, and what I would love to see in some ways, if we could ever get our governor to work with us in North Carolina, to happen in Charlotte. But with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record the research that Representative Kamlager-Dove and I referenced concerning the threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, which the Department of Justice scrubbed from its website in September.
Without objection, the gentlelady from
Thank
Texas
you.
is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States.
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter, so let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history, an attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind you
belongs
that you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to even
from
acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank
bet.
you. General,
Thank
did you have
you,
anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Thank you, General, and thank you for being here. And this has been quite a spectacle to observe today. I think it's sad. I ran for Congress because I thought we had serious problems in this country we wanted to try to fix together. And this performance today, not yours, General, but some of my colleagues, has not shored up my confidence that we are up to the task. You and I served together for 8 years when you were Attorney General of Florida and I in Kansas. You served professionally. I'm glad to be able to serve with you in these new roles, and I'm glad you're there, both generally and today. Part of the reason I ran for Congress is because in my former role, I saw in the real world, in my state, the consequences of failed U.S. immigration and border security policy. And I'll spare you the lengthy recitation, but let me give you the short version. I sit here and think about a fellow who was running, I believe it was drugs for the cartels, and shot a police officer in Oklahoma, drove across the border into my state, kidnapped an old man, and then invaded a house and shot at cops before we ultimately neutralized him. He's in prison now for, I believe, the rest of his life. I'm thinking about a drunk driver who was in our country illegally, never should have been here, and one night killed a young deputy on southern Johnson County, Kansas, who was making a traffic stop on another individual. Drunk driver ran into him, never should have been here, shouldn't have happened. Thinking about a guy who was deported repeatedly, came back and ultimately murdered, I believe it was 4 people in Kansas City, Kansas, and then fled to Missouri and killed a 5th guy. He died in prison. I'm thinking about a guy we prosecuted who wasn't supposed to be in this country, who raped a child in a little rural county up north on the Nebraska border, and we sent him to prison for, I believe, the rest of his life. Thinking about a guy who wasn't supposed to be here at all, who murdered, I think it was his wife or his domestic partner in an act of domestic violence in northwest Kansas. Thinking about another guy who was here and joined up with some folks who were citizens and committed a crime spree and then thought he might get caught, so he killed one of his accomplices. And we sent him to prison for the rest of his life. And that's just the ones I'm thinking about sitting right here. And you know what's common in all of those? They all committed violations of my state's law. They were caught by my state's law enforcement. They were prosecuted by my state's prosecutors. They are serving time in my state's prisons. And if and when they ever get out, the United States has said they need to be sent out of this country because of what they did. There's a list, you're holding up photos, General. There's a list on the Department of Homeland Security's website. It has about 280, 290 people like that in my state of Kansas. And you know what? We haven't made headlines like Minneapolis. We haven't made headlines like Memphis. We haven't made headlines like Los Angeles. And you know why? Because our cops are professionals and our politicians, by law, allow them to do their job and to work with federal agents for safe handoffs in order to do everything that's supposed to be done, justice under state law, and the justice of deportation on the back end. So I want to do something that's been rare here today, General. I want to ask you about public policy. Donald Trump won't be president forever. I would like to lock in some of these gains we have made in public safety. Should we be exploring the idea, for example, of beefing up 287G partnerships, or maybe replicating that so that state prosecutors can work more closely with federal prosecutors to get deportation orders as well as state convictions?
Absolutely.
In terms of sanctuary jurisdictions, when a sanctuary jurisdiction says as a matter of politics, go pound sand to the feds, we won't honor your detainer, so they release those people I'm talking about into their communities. And those people commit another crime of property or violence against citizens. Should those citizens have some type of civil redress against the jurisdiction that as a matter of public policy turned those people loose who created the new victims?
Yeah, and Congressman, it's risking the lives of all of the citizens of that jurisdiction.
And you've been sued a lot, or the administration has, by folks who don't like your policies.
Hundreds of times.
You've won many of those.
Yes.
Isn't it the case that the law says under Rule 65 that when you win those and there's a wrongfully entered injunction that there's supposed to be a monetary remedy for that, so there's a cost?
Yes.
And didn't the president direct you and other agency heads to start seeking bonds in those cases?
Yes.
And should we beef up the law in that area by codifying that requirement going forward?
I would love to discuss that with you.
Thank you, General. Thank you for being here.
Gentleman yields back. Well done. Some of the questions he raised, we plan on taking up in a markup in a couple weeks on the whole sanctuary jurisdiction issue. With that, I recognize